What's up, everybody? Is this thing on? Is this thing on? Let's get it, man. Welcome back to another episode of the 410 Pod. I'm your host, K Love, and today's episode is jam packed with some incredible football from this past weekend. I hope everybody had a blessed weekend. I hope, everybody got a chance to sit down and watch football this weekend. We had a lot of interesting games. We'll start with a recap of Oklahoma's matchup with Navy on Friday. Then we'll move to the Colorado versus BYU game, followed up by the Miami versus Iowa State game, and we'll discuss a little bit of that interesting halftime exit by Cam Ward during the Pop Tart Bowl. And we'll visit the Washington Commanders and Atlanta Falcons game from last night and take a look at the heated 2024 MVP race. And finally, we'll break down the second round of the 2024 college football playoffs. Let's get this thing started. All right, first up, we got the Oklahoma versus Navy game. As you see, hold on. Just let's take a second, everybody. We have the face cam. We're finally here. We're taking a step up in the podcast game. If you're not watching and you're listening over on Spotify, I have face cam now on YouTube. So back to the game. Back to the game. You see, got my OU gear up there, man. I am devastated after that loss. Oklahoma, we had a chance to win that game early. We jumped out to a 14-0 lead early in the first quarter. Michael Hawkins, he made some incredible plays. Michael Hawkins made some incredible plays, and, it's not on him. It's really not on him. He hasn't really taken any reps since, I say, what was the last game he played? Last game he played was Auburn? No, not Auburn. It was South Carolina, I believe, and that was like week 6, week 5. He hasn't taken a snap since week 5, guys. Jackson Arnold took back over after we lost back to back with Hawkins, and he hasn't really played since then. But Michael Hawkins had a fair outing on Saturday. I mean, not Saturday, excuse me. Friday afternoon. Michael Hawkins finished 28 of 43. That is a big problem. I think we got into too many throwing situations with Michael Hawkins. I love the designs on most of them, but I believe that, we could have taken the ball out of his hands a little bit more, given Sawchuk the ball a little bit more. He only had 13 carries for 67, averaging 5.2 yards a carry and a touchdown. I think Oklahoma has to do a better job of using using the guys that we have. Gavin Sawchuk, former track runner, and Baby Hamster. His play style reminds me of Doug Martin. Doug Martin, but with speed. Doug Martin with a ton of speed. And he was getting that thing going early, but, Oklahoma just kind of got away from it. We kind of got away from our zone read game as well. I feel like Michael Hawkins, he could have probably had 10 less attempts and probably 5 to 6 more rush attempts. And Gavin Sawchuk could have also got another 5 to 6 rushing attempts. And I think if we controlled the ball more on offense, we would have been in a much, 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 much better situation, from that side of the ball. We really didn't have that many receivers. Our only star receiver that was remaining was Deion Burks, but Deion Burks was out with injury, which is fine. It's a bowl game. It's, I think bowl games are meaningful still, but it's a meaningless bowl game, as people say now, meaningless bowl game. But from the offensive standpoint, we got off to a hot start and then just fell flat in the second half. Not the second half, in the second quarter into the last minute of the game. We were invisible on offense after the first quarter. That 14-0 start, and then Navy just, they score once every quarter. Our defense was, I felt like our defense played well until the second half. I don't know what adjustments we made in the second half on the defensive side of the ball, but it was, it was interesting. We kind of got lackadaisical out there. We were being very undisciplined. As a defensive coach, going against the triple option, a lot of defensive coaches, especially Brent Venables, pregame said that the one thing you have to do on versus a triple option team is stay on your feet as a defense. And why is he saying that? It's because you have to see your keys. If you're not on your feet, good luck, right? You have to see if the QB is going to keep it, or if he's going to do like a reverse toss, or like some type of dive action. I don't know. There's so many options in a triple option. That's why it's the triple option, right? And I felt like we weren't on our feet as much as we were in the first half. I feel like our first half defense, we only gave up 7 points. Eventually, you're going to crack against the triple option, right? The defense is going to crack, right? And their offense is going to break open eventually. And I was afraid, in our episode that released on Friday, I talked briefly about Blake Horvath. Now, Blake Horvath, he attacked us a little more in the passing game than they went for a lot of shots in the pass game than I really thought. But situationally, it just lined up with the situation of the game. Fumble or a big stop on fourth down. They're gonna go take a shot right now. You ran the ball on, they ran the ball on first down the majority of the game, and then randomly, you get your random pop pass, boom. You know what I mean? They were lined up in pistol, I'm pretty sure, a full house, and they had an inline tight end. And it looked like Horvath was going to run triple option. Everybody on the Oklahoma defense took 2 steps downfield, and tight ends just running, boom, 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 right down the seam, like this, hand looking for the rock. I'm like, oh, no, this is where it's going to start. And, like I said, I thought our defense played outstanding in the first half. And then it kind of got, they were on the field a little too much. Oklahoma couldn't really finish too many drives. Went for it on fourth down. How many times did we go on fourth down? We went for it on fourth down 4 times, which surprised me a lot, and I love the aggression, especially in a bowl game, man. You got to leave it all out there. And, back to Blake Horvath. Blake Horvath had 18 carries for 155, averaging 8.6 a touch, and 2 touchdowns, by the way. And 7 for 12 and 92 yards in the pass game. But he could have easily completed two more of those, and they would have been touchdowns. He missed the dude running right down the seam twice. And thankfully he missed them, because if he didn't, then this game would have definitely gotten a lot more out of hand. You know what I mean? And I felt like it was closer than it should have been. After that, after that 14.0, that 14-point lead in the first quarter, I thought we had it, right? I thought we had it in the bag. And unfortunately, we didn't. Navy showed up. Blake Horvath showed up. And Alec Texa is legit. He's a dude, but we kept him under wraps in this game. He had 15 carries for 43 yards and 2.9 a carry. And then he had the goal line touchdown. They were like on the 1 or the 2. And he ran a simple dive, and he ran it right down there, right up our nose. But for this game, it's a bowl game. We had 24 players that were playing that were actually on scholarship. So, do with that info with what you want, because I think, if we had a little bit more help, it would have been a bit different. I think those 21 points that Navy would have been added on to our 20-point total, and it would probably have been 41-7. But it was a gritty game. It was an exciting game nonetheless. I was expecting an exciting game. Navy's no slouch this year, man. They're no slouch, and kudos to those guys. They got a bowl win in the Armed Forces Bowl. It was fitting. It was very fitting for those guys, and you know, I think another standout player, from Oklahoma. Just looking ahead in the future. A guy, Ivan Carrion. No one really knows who he is, but Ivan Carrion, he's a 6'6", 205-pound wide receiver. He was a 4-star in the 2024 class, and man, he had a game yesterday. Carrion had 7 catches for 72 yards. A lot of yak plays, which surprised me because in high school he had yak plays in high school, but it wasn't too many. There were a lot of 50-50 balls. He's a big red area target, red zone target, same difference. But he showed up yesterday. True freshmen stand out there, and another freshman that's really stood out, late in the season. Not true freshman, actually, he's a true sophomore if I'm not mistaken. But Zion Kearney, 2 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Had a explosive play touchdown there early in the game, and he looks good. Zion Reagans looks good as well. True freshman out of Macon, Georgia. If I'm not mistaken. He's a true freshman, 4-star out of high school, depending on the recruiting site. Some had him at 5, some had him at 4. But 4-star out of high school, he had 4 catches for 20 yards. Jacob Jordan's had a solid outing, an all right outing. He had 5 catches for 27, catching a couple J screens, couple hitches. But there's a lot of names that we really didn't expect to see this year. But in bowl season, everyone is either transferring out or opting out. It's the new mantra of college football, y'all. You're either gonna be transferring out before the bowl game, or you're gonna be opting out before the bowl game. Either way, one team that will be playing is probably gonna have half of their roster depleted before the bowl game. And I think it's trash. I think it's trash that guys do that. It's kind of ruining the quote unquote aura of college football. And, we want to see the best, these are the best teams in the country. These teams earn their way to a bowl game, and we want to see those guys go. And the fact that at least 50% of the roster is not even there is, come on. You see what NIL's doing to the game, y'all. You see what NIL's doing to the game. We'll get to the Cam Ward situation in a second. We'll get to that. But congratulations to Navy on defeating Oklahoma in the Armed Forces Bowl. They earned their win. Oklahoma, it's time to hit the offseason, y'all. It's time to hit the offseason. I hope they're ready for the offseason, because next season better be special. And I'm a diehard Oklahoma fan, and I'm ready to see something change for the Sooners. I'm ready to see us back on top. You know what I mean? And that's all I got for that segment there. But, from Oklahoma's slightly impressive or challenging performance, despite however you want to take the game, we moving on to another bowl matchup, Colorado versus BYU. Man, them Buffaloes they're not running no more. Colorado got destroyed by BYU in the Alamo Bowl Saturday night, 36-14, bringing his father-son drama to a close. Bringing it to a close, man, with a flat performance in front of a sellout crowd of 64,261 at the Alamo Dome. to see Colorado play, to see Travis Hunter play, to see Shedeur Sanders play, to see Deion Sanders coach. Ain't nobody there to see BYU. Everybody's there to see those three. And Shiloh, excuse me. Shiloh Sanders as well. Anybody with the last name Sanders, they were there to see. And it's embarrassing, bro. Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders, son of Coach Deion Sanders, he faced a ton of pressure Saturday night, from the BYU D line for much of the game, and was sacked 4 times. 4 times, and I feel like he wasn't touched that much this year. His O-line, from last year to this year is like a big jump. It was a big jump. And seeing their offensive line on Saturday night, it looked like 2023 season all over again. Shedeur had an okay outing. He threw for 16 of 23, completions to attempts, and 208 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. Crucial interceptions, y'all. And Travis Hunter, Heisman winner. He had another big game, hauling in 4 catches for 106 yards and a touchdown, alongside with 4 tackles on defense. But Colorado didn't seem to want this game as much as BYU did. And, they played really sloppy football, committed 7 penalties in the first half alone. And also one that took back a interception from Shiloh. Shiloh had a hell of a game. Shiloh could have had a pick on Saturday night, but bad defensive, discipline. It really looked like 2023 Colorado football out there on Saturday night. And I don't know if, I hate to kind of blame Coach Prime for this, you know what I'm saying, and say that he didn't have those guys prepared, because I'm sure he had those guys prepared. But, it's hard to blame anybody, really. It's hard to put the blame on anybody. You know what I mean? BYU had some standout players. Jake Retzlaff did not have the hottest game ever. Not at all. He threw two picks as well. He was 12 of 21, 151 yards and 2 interceptions. But LJ Martin, that BYU run game showed up. 17 carries for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. Averaging 5.5 a carry. Sion Imoa, also ran in a touchdown, 4 carries for 25 yards, averaging 6 a carry. Blowout, pure blowout in the Alamo Bowl. It was supposed to be a really good game. It's a conference matchup, and it was actually potentially a Big 12 championship matchup at one point at the end of the season. But unfortunately, Colorado lost to Kansas, and BYU lost to Kansas too, if I'm not mistaken. They lost to someone in the Big 12, and they destroyed their hopes to play in the Big 12 championship, right along with Colorado. These were 2 teams that could have easily been in the college football playoffs right now. And this game just looked one-sided all night long. And, I thought Retzlaff would have had a much better day, but he didn't. Colorado looked like they just didn't want to be there. They just looked like they didn't want to be there. But, does this, there's a lot of questions going around on social media, and everyone's asking, does Shedeur Sanders playing on Saturday night's game affect his draft stock? And I want to say a little bit, but not really. Not really. We all understand the situation. We've seen what Deion Sanders has said. He's going to be a part of everything in the draft, related to Shadir, Shallow, and Trahav. He's going to be a part of the whole process. The whole process. And I don't think it hurt him. People probably give him more kudos for playing, right? People probably give him a lot more kudos for playing than, opting out like I was talking about. And shout out to Coach Prime. Shout out to Coach Prime, for, making sure everybody played, giving people what they wanted, right? No more of this opting out BS. No more of this, like transferring out BS. Yeah, they had guys that transferred, but those guys probably didn't see the field one time this year, outside of out of conference play. So I don't think Shadir's draft stock is really going to take much of a hit. Coaches will watch this game closely again, though. Obviously, after the 2 interceptions, he had some really bad incompletions out there, and it looked kind of sloppy. This game just looked sloppy overall. It didn't look like the Colorado we've seen all year long, and it showed. It showed in the score. Scoreboard. 36 points allowed. That Colorado defense had no business being on the field with BYU. And, Colorado trailed early. You know what I mean? They trailed 20-0 at halftime. And they failed to score in their first 6 possessions. And finished the game with 210 total yards of offense. Like, that's just not Colorado, man. That's not Colorado at all, dude. And I don't understand what happened. Hold on, excuse me. There we go. Yeah. I don't understand what happened. But BYU wanted it more. They wanted it more, and it looked like that all year. BYU looked like they wanted it more in a lot of the games they've played this season. And shout out to Shadir again for staying in the game even late when they were getting blown out. And congratulations to them on turning that season around, right? Although it didn't finish the way they wanted it to finish, but it's the result that they got after they stepped off that field. Colorado's got to come out there and play a lot better than that, if they wanted a chance against BYU, because BYU ain't no slouch now. They ain't no slouch now. You know what I'm saying? Right? You see, they got guys everywhere. One guy isn't picking it up, performing the way that they expect. The next guy, the running game got him. You know what I'm saying? They said, "Hey, Jake, I see you. I see you struggling today. We got you. Keep your head in the game, right? Slow everything down, and let the run game open things up for you." And it sure did. It sure as hell did for him. And Colorado finished the season 9-4. This has been their best season since 2016, when they finished 10-4 after a blowout loss in the Alamo Bowl. Tough. That's tough, man. And BYU finishes 11-2. Outstanding season from BYU, man. I think a lot of those guys are coming back, if I'm not mistaken. So BYU is going to be another team again to look out for. Those guys, they got some talent over there. Jake Retzlaff is actually a legit quarterback. Did not look too legit in the game Saturday night, but in every other game he's played, he's played pretty good. LJ Martin is just superb back. Superb back. Real deal back. Right? Speaking of running backs, hold on. Pause the episode real quick. Let's take a second. Look at the jersey, man. The real Heisman winner. The guy that should have been the Heisman, y'all. This is the guy that should have been the Heisman here. Genty, dog. Genty. right? He should have been the Heisman. But that's just, you know, a thought that came up. But now let's shift gears from the BYU blowout versus Colorado in the Alamo Bowl from Saturday night. And let's shift gears to the Pop Tart Bowl between Miami and Iowa State. Also, Cam Ward and the major decision he made during or before the Pop Tart Bowl game. You know, here's what went down. Miami loses 42-41 to Iowa State. This was arguably the game of the weekend. The game of the weekend. Shocking things happened in this game, and one being Cam Ward, right? Cam Ward opted to sit out of the game in the second half, and this really brings me back to what I was talking about. You know, I don't really give his, excuse my language, rat's ass if he made that decision before the game. You know what I mean? If you made the decision to play the game, dude. Like, you just seen Deion Sanders. I don't care if you lose or win. Like, losing or winning this game ain't gonna hurt you. Like, I mean, unless you lose, unless you get beat by like 40, right? That's the only way. That's the only way, Cam. I get it if he's trying to, hold on. We're moving too fast. We're moving too fast anyways, right? We're moving too fast. Miami loses Saturday to Iowa State 42-41. On the bright side, Cam Ward sets the NCAA career passing touchdown record, taking over Case Keenum's spot of 156 touchdowns thrown. Oh my God, that's a lot. That's a lot of touchdowns, y'all. That is a lot of touchdowns, and shout out to Cam Ward for that, dog. He's a dog. Cam Ward's a dog. Miami and Iowa State, they were striking early. Right? And if you look at the box score, right, after the first quarter, it was 21-14. Iowa State. It was 21-14. 5 touchdowns were scored in the first quarter. And then it was 31-28 by halftime. 31-28 by halftime. Cam Ward in that first half, 12 of 19, 190 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Man, listen. Cam Ward was out there lighting it up. He had that one highlight play. It was a 3rd and 7. Unfortunately, it was a turnover following, the cool little play, right? He was, he dropped back, had a million years in the pocket. He just stood there. My boy just stood there, hit the check down, got the first down. Dude fumbles, guys. But other than that, Cam Ward, he played outstanding. Despite the controversial decision to sit out of that game in the second half. Heisman Trophy, excuse my language, excuse my English. Heisman Trophy finalist Cam Ward played a major role in that offensive explosion in the first half. He set him up for success going into the second half. Like I said, throwing for 3 touchdowns, but the potential first round draft pick sat out of the second half, and Miami seemed to be in control despite that. But a long drive, petered out in the red zone, and that left the door open for the Cyclones, who came back to win thanks to, in no small part, to the quarterback, man. That quarterback, Rocco Becht, 1-yard touchdown run with just 50 seconds to go. Rocco Becht put the team on his back. The team on his back. And look at here. Looky here. Iowa State has its first 11-win season ever? Ever, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Shout out to Iowa State. They could have been in the college football playoffs, but, Iowa State started the game off perfectly. On the first play of the game, Iowa State forces a fumble. No. Sorry. They didn't force a fumble. Not Cam Ward, the Miami Hurricanes, center, can't remember his name right now, but he snapped it. Cam Ward drops the ball. I guess it came back. It looked like it came back a little hot. So, if they snap it fast, super fast, it's going to rise just a tad bit. And Cam Ward loses control of the football and ball in the ground. Ball, fumble. Iowa State they were all over it, right? Iowa State really looked like they wanted it all 4 quarters. Miami thought it was just going to be cruise control after halftime, after scoring 31 points at half. But, you gave up 28 as well, Miami. Like, what are we taking our foot off the gas for right now? It looked like they took their foot off the gas. In that 31-28 halftime score was the highest score seen in a D1 bowl game since 2019. That was some offense being played, no defense. No defense is being played in that first half at all. But Miami's defense, this is what I got to say about that. Miami's defense sucked in this game. I think, watching this game here, the amount of missed tackles, you know what? I'm going to go back and watch this game. I'm going to find a way to go back and watch this game. And I'm going to come back next episode with the amount of missed tackles I saw. Because seeing that many missed tackles from that level of football, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable, Mario Cristobal. I don't understand. Miami's defense is supposed to be good. And they look like shit. Yes, on over this past weekend. Look like shit. And excuse my language. And it backfired. Rocco Becht had he threw 22 completions, throwing 36 attempts, 270 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ran the ball eight times, 23 yards, 2.9 a carry, a touchdown. Now, another one of my favorite players from this game, number 26, their running back, Carson Hansen. Carson Hansen has 16 carries for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaging 5 yards a carry. He was running that thing. And another player had another standout performance. Jalen Noel, wide receiver Jalen Noel, Noel. He hauled in 8 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. And Gabe Burkle, another receiver who hauled in 4 catches, 54 yards and another touchdown. And Carson Hansen also hauled in a receiving touchdown, totaling his touchdowns on 3 on the day. So Iowa State's offense was clicking all day long, and they were clicking at the right times. Miami's defense sucks. That was the worst performance I've seen all year from Miami's defense, And Iowa State ain't no slouch, right? They finished, they were ranked 18 to finish the year. So, they were no slouch. They made it to the Big 12 championship. So, I'm not trying to take anything away from Iowa State. But Miami, all the Miami fans, all that talk, all that chirping y'all do in the preseason, all that chirping y'all do all season long. When it really matters, are you going to show up? Are you going to show up? It looked like they didn't. All right. Came up short in this game. Came up really short. This game was filled with a whole bunch of excitement. The Pop Tart Bowl is a pretty new bowl. And the trophy at the end You know what I mean? It's pretty sick. I thought that was pretty sick. You know how the Pop Tart comes out, and it was pretty dope. But back to the game. Miami came up short, man. I feel like if Cam Ward did not sit out of that second half, the outcome would have been a lot different. Iowa State were like, no Cam Ward? We licking our chops right now. Y'all. Let's go. Right? And I'm not taking anything off of Miami's backup. Emory Williams played, but 5 of 14, 26 yards in the pick. That ain't happening. That ain't cutting it, man. Miami also had some outstanding performances. Damian Martinez, running back, 14 carries, 179 yards, and a touchdown. Should have kept feeding him. Also, Mark Fletcher, they're splitting carries, 12 carries to 62 yards and a touchdown. He's really good. Really, really, really good. Right? They're splitting carries between a lot of backs right now, and they need to figure out a system there. Because unfortunately, Miami were missing their 3 top receivers, and they had to figure out a way to get the run game going, and they did. Just wasn't enough, man. Emory Williams had to make some sort of impact in that game, but he did not. He threw an interception, and it was a tough loss. Tough loss, right? Tough loss that finished with a 15-play, 84-yard drive that finished with Rocco Beck busting through on the 4th down in inches to score a touchdown with less than a minute to go. Miami loses to Iowa State, and we got to move on to this Cam Ward situation again. I kind of briefly touched on it earlier in the segment, but I don't like the decision. I'm not going to make it such of a big deal. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Kudos to him for still suiting up and playing. But if you're going to, in my opinion, y'all, if you're going to suit up and play, you better play the whole game. I feel like your team is counting on you to play the whole game. I understand you're out there chasing records and shit, but, dude, you got a job to do. Imagine if I showed up to my job and said, hey, coach, or hey, boss, I'm going to come in here, work for 2 hours, and you know what I'm saying? I got an 8-hour shift. I say, I'm going to come in here, work for 2 hours, and I'm just going to take the last 6 off. You guys can kiss my ass. It was a good time. Deuces. I get fired on the damn spot. And I don't get it, man. What is up with this new era of football, y'all? It has become political and all about the Benjamins, dog. It has become political and all about the Benjamins, baby. And I disagree with the decision to just play one half. Just don't play. Just don't play. If you're going to just come in and stat chase, you know what I mean? And then just sit out and what are you protecting? Your legacy, your draft stock, you know what I'm saying? Injury. You already played a half of football. You don't get touched. You were one of the least sacked quarterbacks this year. You don't get touched. Why are you sitting out, bro? Just play. It's your last game in Miami. It's your last college football game ever. You might as well suit yourself up and play, bro. Just suit up and play. Excuse me. And I'm just not a fan of it. Either play or not. Right? And Mario Cristobal had something to say at the end of the game regarding the decision, Cam Ward, regarding the Cam Ward decision to sit out of the second half. And I quote, "I think all meetings with players and decisions like that, we make We make them in private, and we keep them in private. So I'll prefer not to answer questions as it relates to that. I know he played his best while he was in there. Right? I don't know. It might be some real, like, behind the scenes stuff, Maybe he wasn't getting paid to play through the bowl game. I think he was definitely just chasing. He's definitely just chasing the record. And I could give a rat's ass about your NIL deal, bro. You're about to go make triple of whatever you made in your rookie deal. Because you might be a top 10 pick. I don't know. Based on how this draft falls into place because of the New York Giants, not tanking for a quarterback when they should be. Yeah. Miami loses to Iowa State, 42-41. Cam Ward opted out of the second half of the Pop Tart Bowl, leaving the sports world, the football world, in shambles and leaving them with a ton of questions. And with college football heating up, let's head back to the pros, man. Let's head back to the NFL and break down this Washington Commanders game and Atlanta Falcons game from last night. That game was exciting. Two rookie quarterbacks dueling, two lottery pick quarterbacks just dueling it off on Sunday Night Football. And I thought going into this game, it would have been, a snooze fest. I thought it may have been one-sided. Just, I don't know. I didn't know that Atlanta was going to be this aggressive with Phoenix this early, but you kind of have to battle in for a playoff spot. It's a risk reward behind that, and I think it's high risk, high reward, maybe, or high risk, low reward, depending on who you ask. But the Washington Commanders defeat the Atlanta Falcons in overtime, defeating them 30-24, moving them to 11-5 and clinching the playoffs on the AFC side. The Atlanta Falcons moved to 8-8, and they're still in the hunt. They're still clawing, trying to get into that last spot of the playoffs, man. And they're in the mix with a few other teams, like Seattle. All right, Seattle ain't bad. The LA Rams, right? They're competing for that last spot of the playoffs. And Michael Penix played a really, really good game, actually. He had an interception there. But he finished 19-35, 223 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Bijan Robinson, he was carrying his load on the run game. He had 17 carries for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Drake London had a really good outing. 7 catches for 106 yards with a failed hurdle attempt. And then Kyle Pitts had 4 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts kind of had some minor breakout game. He looked really good in his 4 catches. In those 4 catches, he looked really good, right? But other than that, the Falcons defense showed up. They produced 1, 2, 3, 4 sacks. They put some pressure on Jaden Daniels, but it just wasn't enough, Caden Ellis also had an interception, right? Commanders showed up. Jaden Daniels had offensive rookie of the year type game. He threw 24, 36, 227, 3 touchdowns and an interception, right? And he carried the ball 16 times for 127 yards on the ground, 7.9 yards a carry, and no touchdowns. Brian Robinson also had 13 carries and 60 yards. Alameda Zacchaeus. I'm probably butchering it, but he hauled in 8 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. Zach Ertz had a big game-winning touchdown as well. 6 catches, 72 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Right? you had some guys stepping up last night, and the Commanders kind of controlled the game in the second half. They went down 17-7 at halftime, and then they came out striking hot. Scored 7 in the third, scored 10 in the fourth. Atlanta scored 7 in the fourth to tie the game up. But in the end, the Commanders had the upper hand, and they had a good drive and finished with a Jaden Daniels touchdown to Zach Ertz. It was actually a really good ball. He fit that thing into a real tight window, and if this is a really good thing to see though, because quarterback play has a big question mark on it right now, and I don't know, this next generation of quarterbacks, or however you should say it, is it's going to be interesting. We're going to have a lot more dual threat guys, and the game of football is changing, and whether or not you like it, get used to it, because you're going to see more games of 250 and through the air and 120 on the ground. Quarterbacks are going to be starting to get used a lot more, right? This is something that kind of was introduced in the 2010s, early 2000s, but that type of play with those rules, without the restrictions, it wasn't feasible. You weren't going to last. You weren't going to be built to last, man. And I think the way the game is going with all the rule changes, the game is getting soft, y'all. It's getting soft. It's getting soft. It is getting soft. Too many flags are being thrown for egregious hits. So quarterbacks are going to have their way soon. In the future, they're going to just be able to have their way. Guys like Lamar, guys like Jaden Daniels, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, even Josh Allen, they're going to have their way in the future, right? And that's that. But Washington, Cliff, what's his name? Cliff Kingsbury, excuse me. He's kind of a tongue twister. He's been putting on a clinic this year. Last night they had 412 total yards of offense, 29 first downs earned, 6 for 13 on third down, efficient. Could be higher. They still want that number to be above 50%. They were 100% on fourth downs, right? They were being aggressive at the right times in the game to get themselves back into the game, and they were on the money. Cliff was dialing it up, right? I mentioned that Atlanta, they got after the quarterback a few times. That Commanders O-line isn't the greatest, but, they held their stuff. Now, an important stat, that I always talk about with the Baltimore Ravens, that I'm going to bring up with the Commanders, if they want to make it far in the playoffs, they're gonna have to bring this penalty number down, man. 13 penalties for 108 yards. That's why y'all were in this game, really. You know what I'm saying? Despite the really slow start, 13 penalties is not gonna cut it, Washington. Despite the victory, it's hard to overcome that, and that's why you guys went to overtime with the Atlanta Falcons, and. Despite that, it was a really good win from those guys. It was a really good game to cap off interesting Sunday. You had a couple other good games on, but this was definitely the game of the day, or game of the day, I should say. And it was really different, seeing two rookie quarterbacks in prime time. You don't really see that. You don't really see that often. No one knew that Michael Penix would be playing at this point in the year. Actually, there were some people out there that called it, because Kirk Cousins is going to do Kirk Cousins shit, right? Kirk Cousins is going to do Kirk Cousins shit. He plays really good. He looks like an MVP candidate for a good 8 weeks. Next thing you know, he looks like Josh Dobbs. or he looks like Dan Orlovsky. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. And he's getting paid a lot of money right now. He's getting paid, 45 mil a year? Can't have that sitting on the sideline. So Atlanta Falcons are really going to have to figure out their QB situation. If I had to take a guess, they're rolling with old buddy. They're rolling with Michael Penix. They are rolling with Michael Penix, man, and I would too, right? I would too. And to cap off this segment with, the Washington Commanders and the Atlanta Falcons, I want to move on to congratulating one of their players, Jeremy Reeves. He proposes to his girlfriend after a team secures their NFL playoff spot. Let me bring this up here. 1 second. 1 second. Let's see. Here we go. Boom. Let me show you guys this here. Here we go. Booyah. Excuse me, guys. Using the new software now. Here we go. Right. Congratulations to them. That's really exciting, After, clinching a playoff spot and since when? When was the last time they made the playoffs, man? It's not often the Commanders make the playoffs. Or, the formerly known as the Redskins make the playoffs. But it's good to see, more different teams in the playoffs, because it gets tiring to see the same old every year, right, guys? And seeing a young quarterback flourish like this, right, having an insane season. I mean, when you take a look at Jaden Daniels, let me bring his stats up here. Jaden Daniels is having a rookie year for the ages, y'all. Rookie year for the ages, man. Here we go. Here's Jaden Daniels. 69% completion percentage, 3,500 yards, 25 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and then scroll on over to his rushing stats. His rushing stats are just as good, right? 864 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns, right? 15 more passing touchdowns and a few less picks. He's having the same season as Lamar Jackson. And I might be crazy for saying this. That's his ceiling, though. That's his ceiling. Lamar Jackson is his ceiling. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be a special quarterback in this league. He's already got the Commanders in the playoffs in his rookie year, so that's a great start there, right? Congratulations to the Washington Commanders on defeating the Atlanta Falcons and clinching their first playoff spot in 4 years. I want to say, yes, 4 years. Their first playoff spot in 4 years, and with a rookie quarterback and a new system. Congratulations, y'all. And Atlanta, you got one more chance. You have one more chance next week. Next week, right? And speaking of defining seasons, let's zoom out and talk about the league's two most electrifying players in the 2024 MVP race. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. This is the talk that, this is the talk of the league right here. Lamar Jackson is having the outright better season, personally, statistically speaking, compared to Josh Allen's season, right? I think Lamar Jackson should not be crucified for his losses. Right? Now, if we take a look at their stats, here, right? Lamar Jackson is throwing for 67 completion percentage right now. He has the second highest passer rating of all time. 121.6 on the season. 121.6 on the season, y'all. And hold on, let me get this up here for y'all. I'm gonna get this up here for you guys. And here we go. Let's get that up there for y'all. Right there. 1 second, guys. 1 second. Here we go. Move this over. There we go. Here we go. Look at these stats, y'all. It's one season right here. This is this season right here. 1-0 versus each other, right? Lamar Jackson is 1-0 versus Josh Allen. Lamar defeated Josh Allen back in weeks 4, 5, 35-10. Also a game where Josh Allen was benched. He's getting blown out. Got benched. Right? On the season, Josh Allen has the better record through 16 games at 13-3. Lamar Jackson sits at 11-5. Let's stop there, right? Let's halt there. Let's talk about records. Josh Allen's record first. He has 6 free wins in the AFC East. 6 free wins. Because he gets to play against Tyler Huntley, Aaron Rodgers, and the Poverty Jets. Right? The Jets are terrible. The Dolphins are terrible this year. Right? Dolphins can't play in the cold. And he has to play against the rookie-led Drake May New England Patriots. That is 6 free wins in that conference. Right there. You take still 6 wins away. They have a 7-win season. But we can't speculate like that, right? We can't speculate like that. So we have to take it how it is. He dominated his division. It is not his fault that the division is weak, but the division is freaking sorry. The division is sorry. And, we keep moving on. Lamar Jackson is more efficient, throwing almost 68% completion percentage compared to Josh Allen's 63.5.6. Lamar Jackson is throwing for 3,955 passing yards compared to Josh Allen's 3,700 passing yards. 8.9 in attempt, 7.7 in attempt, yards per game, 247, almost 250 a game. Josh Allen's 233 a game. You're getting the gist, guys. Like Lamar Jackson, 39 passing touchdowns to Josh Allen's 28. Right? 4 interceptions, 6 interceptions is more. And we're going to halt there too. 3 of those interceptions really ain't even his fault. And if you really want to look at the 4th one, Bateman stopped his route. So, if we want to put it in perspective, Lamar Jackson has 39 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. But we can't speculate like that, right? We got to keep it real. Right? He has 4 interceptions. All right. But second highest quarterback rated in the NFL right now. I don't know who he's behind. It has to be somebody who hasn't played that many snaps. But I'm going to sit here and say he has the highest passer rating in the NFL compared to Josh Allen's 101, which is still good, right? I'm not saying I'm not taking anything away from Josh Allen's season. I am just here to state the facts. I am here to just state what we know. 130 rushing attempts, 852 yards, 6.6 a carry, 4 rushing touchdowns to his 12, where he leads in, right? Come on. Look at me and listen to me closely and clearly. We don't care about QB sneak touchdowns. We don't care about the QB sneak touchdowns. We really don't, right? We don't care about the QB sneak touchdowns. And that's why, right, I believe Lamar Jackson is this year's 2024 NFL MVP. And I think the league needs to be put on notice. And, you know, this brings me back to, you know, the voter fatigue thing. You know, that whole, you know, the fatigue, the being tired of just, quote unquote, giving Lamar the MVP. How are you giving it to him when he continues to exceed everything that he's ever done? He's literally playing way better than his last 2 MVP seasons. And then, you know, people kind of discredit those 2 seasons just because he's playing this good now. What do you want a player to do? Do you want a player to regress after his MVP season? Like, make it make sense. Do you want Lamar Jackson to regress after one of his MVP seasons? He got better and better and better and better every year, right? And this year he is playing lights out. He's almost got 5,000 total yards. He's almost got 5,000 total yards by himself. Do we not understand how insane that is? He could go out there this Sunday, right? Throw for 300 yards. And he'll have his 5,000 in one season total. I don't think the committee really understands that, bro. And through all the bullshit he really has had to go through all season, you know, this team should be undefeated. They're not undefeated because of him. They're undefeated because the team is undisciplined with 12 penalties a game, damn near, right? Justin Tucker in a slump all year long, missing game-winning, game crucial, game field goals. It's game tying, game winning, missing kicks, right? Defense was horrible. The league's worst for the first half of the season. Like the first 6 to 7 weeks of the season, the defense was the league's worst passing defense we've seen in a long time, giving up 263 yards to one receiver in one game. 193 yards to the same receiver in one game. He's had to go through all of that and still is about to win his division. One of the toughest divisions in football, if not the toughest division in football, because why? We're about to have 3 teams potentially in the NFL playoffs this season. And we're trying to penalize Lamar Jackson because of that? Let's be real. You know what I mean? And like I said, y'all, I'm not taking anything away from Josh Allen's absolutely electric season. You know what I'm saying? But what I am going to take away are those 12 push touchdowns. I'm taking away for those 12 push touchdowns, right? We don't care about push touchdowns, because if we cared about push touchdowns, when Jalen Hurts had 16 touchdowns last year or 2 years ago, we should have gave him the MVP. Let's be real. Right? Josh Allen, you know what I mean? his case isn't even as strong as Joe Burrow's. Right? Joe Burrow is coming from playing in the toughest division in football. He is playing with the absolute worst defense in football outside of the worst teams in football. They're bottom 5 worst defense in football. Oh, 100%. 100%. And his case of MVP needs to be up there, right? If you take a look at Joe Burrow, right? Joe Burrow he having a year. Joe Burrow. Let's pull up Joe Burrow here. Let's pull it up. Here we go. Let's pull that thing up. 1 second, y'all. Let me get it up for y'all. Here we go. Joe Burrow, 4,600 yards. First in the NFL. 42 passing touchdowns. First in the NFL. 8 interceptions. 76.7 QBR. Third in the NFL. And the Bengals are sitting at 8-8 after an electric win versus the Denver Broncos, making their case for the playoffs on the AFC side a lot stronger. They have one more game, and they need to beat the Steelers. They need to beat the Steelers in order to get this thing done, man. Hold on. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they play the Steelers next week, right? Excuse me. Joe Burrow has a better case. Same thing with Saquon Barkley, right? Saquon Barkley just eclipsed 2,000 rushing yards, right? That's in the, and then here's the difference, right? There's a difference between having an MVP season and then having an offensive player of the year type season, right? And when we take a look at, Joe Burrow's, not Joe Burrow's, what's his name? Josh Allen's stats, right? We take a look at the stats. The 12 rushing touchdowns and the 28 passing touchdowns, that's an offensive player of the year type of stat line. You just scoring touchdowns at a mass amount on both sides of the ball, right? Your competition, the competition he's played all year is weak. Half of his season is not half of his season, but slightly less than half of his season is 6 week divisional games, and I don't know if we can credit him for the MVP, man. I feel like if he played a lot better competition, I believe Josh Allen could make a case for it, right? Granted, he beat the Chiefs, he destroyed the Lions, man. But let's put this in perspective. You can beat them, right? But you lose to a struggling Rams team, right? Yes, you scored 6 touchdowns. You had 3 touch pushes, and you still couldn't do enough to win that game. Granted, your defense gave up 40 points. I get it. But MVPs win those games. Lamar Jackson isn't losing that game. Lamar Jackson was in a game very similar to that one, 2 seasons ago? 3 seasons ago when the Rams were at their absolute best? Absolute shootout? Oh, no, last season. Excuse me. Last season, we played the Rams. They had the same exact roster. Cooper Kupp was playing. Cooper Kupp was back. And shootout, Lamar Jackson put the team on his back, won the game. That's the difference, right? That's the difference, dude. Man, and if I can bring up any other performance from Lamar Jackson, you know what I mean? I just feel like every performance has just been dominating outside of the losses. Even in the losses, they were dominating because, dude, when your defense is giving up 300 passing yards a game, 300 to 400 passing yards a game, and you got to consistently go out there and match that every week, You're telling me that's not most valuable? That's not a most valuable like trait there? Like, let's be real, y'all. Let's be real. Right? We getting real? Let's be real. And right, I think this conversation is just getting a little bit out of hand. Um I just hope Lamar Jackson wins. But at the same time, I could care less if he wins MVP anymore. He's got two of them things. Unanimous win already, right? He's already got a unanimous one. And I hope he wins. And Josh Allen, I think you had a hell of a season. I'm not taking anything away. Joe Burrow, I think you really deserve it out of anybody in the league. And coming from a Ravens fan, that is a lot. I'm saying a lot there. I'm saying that's a lot of praise. And Joe Burrow, I think, deserves it, right? He's quite literally dragging the worst defense through the mud and saying, hey, I'm going to carry this team and win these games. So he looks like an alien on the field. But this MVP race is going to come down to who has the best narrative, right? You got guys like Dan Orlovsky, who has played 26 games in the NFL and I don't even think has thrown 30 touchdowns in his career. Got guys like that out here saying, they're calling Josh Allen's interception. I can't remember who it was, but it was 3rd and 16. They were definitely in field goal range. And he threw an interception in the back of the end zone, and they called it an arm punt. Now, if Lamar Jackson throws an interception, they're questioning his decision making. Right? Arm punts usually happen closer to the 50, and then in the minus territory. And you throw a long ball on 3rd and 15. I get it. On 3rd and 15, and you're in the minus 50 territory. That's an arm punt. But an arm punt in the plus 50 territory, where you have a kicker with a leg on him who can make kicks from that far, that is not an arm punt. Now we're creating narratives. Right? I'm calling out Dan Orlovsky mainly, man. I'm tired of seeing it. Dan Orlovsky pops up on my feed every day. You know what I mean? Every time I see the arm punt thing, guys, I'm pulling up something here. It's just, unacceptable. And I kind of see that, what they're trying to do here. They're really trying to push who has the best narrative. Right? Josh Allen does not. They're trying to make it. A narrative. And it sucks, right? It really does suck. And I'm about to pull up the video here of Dan Orlovsky. Calling it an arm punt. He said that's not an interception. That's an arm punt. What do you mean it's an arm punt, Dan? Let's get this thing up here. Let's get that thing up. Here we go. Let's go back. Here we go. Plus 50 territory. That's not an interception. You know what I mean? Right? And then here's him speaking on Lamar. That's Dan Orlovsky, guys. That was Dan Orlovsky and his takes on Lamar Jackson in the MVP race. Not really that, not in the MVP race, but that's how he talks about Lamar in comparison to if Josh Allen were to make a mistake. You know what I'm saying? You guys kind of see where I'm getting at here with this, right? I feel like this award is really just, it's really who has the best narrative. It's a shame, you know what I mean? The MVP really used to mean something, you know what I mean? It really used to go to the most valuable player on the team. But we'll see how this shakes out. Like I said, I'm rooting for Lamar. I'm rooting for my guy, man. MV3. I hope he can do it. Right. Now, let's wrap up the episode with a look at the highly anticipated second round of college football playoffs. And what can we expect as these teams fight for a championship berth, right? And the first game up is Boise. I'm not a Boise State fan. I am this year. I'm an Ashton Jeanty fan, right? I love Ashton Jeanty's, play style. I love the way he plays the game, right? I love how he approaches everything, right? And this is the first game. Tomorrow, it kicks off tomorrow's New Year's Eve, at 6:30. At 6:30, Penn State opens up as a 11-point favorite versus number 3 Boise State. And as we take a look into this game, both sides have electric players. You know what I mean? We're gonna have it's gonna be an interesting QB matchup, but we're really not here for the quarterbacks, right? We're really not here for the quarterbacks. Although, Drew Allar, Maddox Madsen, they're really good. They're really good players. I'm not taking anything away from those guys. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to. But we're really here to see Ashton Jeanty. How is Ashton Jeanty going to fare out against one of the top defenses in the country, right? And I think he's going to be fine. I don't think no one's been able to stop him since 2023. He's ran for over 100 yards in every game since midseason of 2023 season, and he's ran for over 125 yards in every game this year. The game plan has been to stop Ashton Jeanty all year long, and nobody's been able to do it yet. And he's he's sat 8 full quarters this year, right? And still managed to put up 2,400 yards. So he's obviously going to be a key player to watch here in this game. Drew Allar, for me, though, is going to be my key player to watch. Not Drew Allar, excuse me. Nick Singleton. It's going to be whose run game is going to be better, because you already know Boise's coming to force the run game. They're going to force the run game. This is going to be a sort of a home game a home game for Boise, right? Idaho's not too far from Arizona. It's far, but it's not as far as Pennsylvania is. So I expect Boise fans to travel from Boise, Idaho. But this is going to be an interesting first game, right? Not really two heavyweight matchups. America's voting on heavily voting or betting for Penn State, which it makes sense, right? It makes sense, but dude, you can't, you know what I mean? You can't really sleep on. You just can't sleep on Jeanty. You can't sleep on Jeanty, man. That dude's, and you can't really sleep on Boise as a team, right? They're a solid team, right? They ran through the Mountain West, almost beat Oregon, right? And, Penn State's coming off a dominating win in round 1 of the college football playoffs versus SMU, 38-10, and they looked like they were in God mode, right? Came out, got two picks off the rip, and ran off with the game from there. That's one thing Boise can't allow to happen, right? Maddox Madsen, they're not asking you to. They are not asking you to win this game, Maddox. They are asking you to not lose this game for Boise State. They are asking you to not lose it. They are not asking you to win it. That's the difference. That's going to be the difference for Boise State. Will Maddox Madsen lose this game for those guys? And it's ridiculous, man. And I don't know how everyone's just counting out Boise State. How do you count them out, man? They've made it this far. They're 12-1. They're legit. I think they're super legit. And I think this game, realistically, I think Penn State will win this game. I don't think they'll win it in blowout fashion. It's going to be hard to get the ball out of Boise State's hands if their run game is going. If their run game is going, Boise State increases their chances of winning this game by a lot. And it's going to be a close one. I think Boise State covers the 11-point, spread. But I think Penn State pulls this one off. I'll be rooting for Boise State, but I think Penn State pulls this one off in a really close one. Not a really close one, but I think they win by a touchdown, though. A touchdown, maybe 10 points. I think Penn State won't cover 11, but Boise State will. And we're going to move on to the next game of the college football playoffs, which is number 5 Texas playing against number 4 Arizona State in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl on New Year's Day at high noon. They'll be the first football game to kick off of the new year, and we have an exciting one. We get to see Cam Scatterbo play football again. And I'm excited to see him. Levitt for ASU, he had a solid season, throwing 192 at 304, 2,663 yards, and 24 touchdowns and 5 picks. It's pretty efficient if you ask me. Cam Scatterbo produced in a really good season. He was in the Heisman voting. He was up for it. I think he was in 4th or 5th place. 263 carries, 1,568 yards and 19 rushing touchdowns. And then, Texas obviously is loaded. They got guys across the board. Quinn Ewers, 26 touchdowns, 10 interceptions with 2,867 passing yards. Quintravion Wisner stepped in after Baxter went down with 191 carries for 973 yards and 5 touchdowns. And, I don't think, this game here is going to be, Texas is opening up as a 13-point favorite, and I see why. Arizona State, this brings me back to my conversation in the last episode. I think is one of those teams that shouldn't really have their automatic bid. But, we take a look. They're 11-2. Georgia's 11-2. Boise's 12-1. Oregon's 13-0. So, realistically, it would probably be Oregon and Boise State, and then everybody else got to earn their way in. I don't think ASU would have earned their way in. I mean, granted, they won their Big 12 championship, but do we really want a Big 12 team in the playoffs anymore? Oklahoma kind of ruined that for the Big 12 back in the day. Kind of ruined it for them, and I think this point spread is correct. I think Texas will come out and dominate ASU, but this game will be solely on Quinn Ewers not turning the ball over. solely on Quinn Ewers not turning the ball over. Because if Quinn Ewers turns this ball over, Texas is in for a long game, man. They are in for a long game. Because when Quinn Ewers turns the ball over, bad shit happens for Texas. Bad things happen for Texas, man. Really bad things. But I think, I think the Texas Longhorns will come out on top versus the Arizona State Sun Devils on New Year's Day at high noon. Like I said, they open up as a 13-point favorite in this game, and I think they'll move on to the Goodyear Cotton Bowl versus the winner of this next game on New Year's Day. Between two heavyweight Big Ten matchups, a rematch, in fact, between number 1 Oregon and number 8 Ohio State, taking place on New Year's Day at 4 o'clock in the Rose Bowl, presented by Prudential. And Ohio State opens up as a 2.5 point favorite. I really don't see why. As we see Ohio State's offensive line towards the end of the year, you know what I mean? They're just depleted. You know what I mean? They've been dropping bodies left and right. Right, and it all started with McLaughlin, their center, or McGowan, or whatever his name is. But the starting center went down, and then everybody else, it was kind of like a domino effect. You know what I mean? And it was hard to see. It was really hard to see. But Ohio State has clawed their way back. They kept fighting and fighting until they finally got that rotation right up front. And it kind of showed. Their offensive line woes in like the Michigan game. Right? Michigan has a really good defensive line. Really good defense, that's their strongest, the only bright side to this season for Michigan, and it showed up for those guys. But Ohio State, hopefully they have their offensive line situations figured out. But I can see Ohio State taking this one, as Oregon has been perfect all year, but they have been tested. They have been put through adversity. Ohio State needs this game more than Oregon needs this game. So I think if Ohio State comes out and plays the same way they did against Tennessee, I think they win it all this year. But we ain't going to move that far. We're not going to move that far. I think Ohio State wins this one in a similar fashion the way Oregon won it the last time, in a 1-point game. I think it's going to be a really close one. It's probably going to come down to the end, as long as both teams come out starting fast. Right, on both sides of all three phases of the game, special teams, offense, and defense. Right, Will Howard's going to have to show up. That Ohio State run game is going to have to show up. Right, Jordan James is going to have to show up for Oregon, and Dylan Gabriel is as well. Right, he's going to have to prove on New Year's Day why he deserves to be drafted in the first round. Right, and this takes me to the last matchup of this week's round 2 of the quarterfinals of the college football playoffs, and it's between number 7 Notre Dame and number 2 Georgia Bulldogs. Right, starting off with this game, UGA opens up as a 1-point favorite. It would probably be a larger point spread if they'd have their quarterback, and it was just announced, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday, Carson Beck is now declaring for the NFL draft. He underwent surgery on his throwing elbow, and he will be missing the remainder of the college football playoffs this year. And I think it's the right decision, man. It's no need to, I get it. It's the playoffs, guys, but you can probably ruin your career messing up your elbow, like your throwing elbow too. You know what I mean? Like, he probably wouldn't be able to throw another football. So I understand, and their backup quarterback's going to have to come in, and he's going to have to come in and be that dude. Right? Gunnar Stockton is going to have to, he's got a big challenge coming up versus a very stout Notre Dame defense. Georgia's going to miss. They're going to miss Carson Beck, right? He's got a lot of experience, national championship experience, a whole lot of college football playoff experience, right? And Gunnar Stockton's got his load cut out for him, right? Gunnar Stockton has completed 25 of 32 passes for 206 yards with no touchdowns and just one interception in 4 games this season. And most of his action really came against the Longhorns in the SEC championship, where he completed 12 of 16 of those passes for 71 yards and one interception. And you know, when I was doing a little bit of reading up on, just the preview of the game, a lot of the Notre Dame players and some of the coaches were saying, it's kind of an advantage for Georgia having Stockton at quarterback because they don't really know what to prepare for. Every time he's been put in the game, it was either garbage time or the Texas game where he kind of got thrown into the fire in the championship game. And he was asked to go in there and not lose the game. And you know what I'm saying? He wasn't asked to win it. Just don't lose it for us. You know what I'm saying? So I agree, because when you ain't got no film on somebody, you ain't got much film, shit, you don't know what's going to come. You ain't know what's coming. But I feel like Georgia's really going to have to lean on that run game. And, because Gunnar Stockton, like we said, he's not as experienced. He isn't as experienced as Mr. Carson Beck. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think if Notre Dame can come out and do what they did against Indiana, which is dominate and control the clock and control the run game, which is going to be a hard feat, versus a stout Georgia defense. Georgia's defense is, year in, year out, they prove why that having defense matters in college, because they win a lot of championships, they win a lot of games, right? But yeah, Notre Dame is going to have to run the ball. Riley Leonard cannot turn the ball over, which he hasn't really done much of that this season. Riley Leonard, 6 interceptions. It's not a lot, but he hasn't really turned the ball over too much. And Julian Love is going to have to show up, right? Jeremiah Love, excuse me, not Julian. Jeremiah Love for Notre Dame running back is going to have to show up, right? This season he finished with 142 yards, 142 carries for 1,057 yards and 16 rushing touchdowns, right? And then Riley Leonard is going to have to be active with his feet, right? He finished with 15 of his own rushing touchdowns. And then Jadarian Price, their second string running back, they're going to have to continue to mix him in as well, right? They have a lot of weapons on Notre Dame. So it's going to be about how they use them and where they, and when. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, Georgia's defense is as stout as it gets. It's as stout as it gets, man. And shoot, it's gonna be hard. This is gonna be the second best game here. I think this will be the second best game here, simply because it's Georgia. And, I don't care who they really have at quarterback, right? Their defense is going to be their defense, and their defense is, you know what I'm saying? The defense is going to win them games. Their defense has won them games, has won them championships in the past. And I think this is another one of those cases where it's going to happen, where it's going to have to happen, right? So I see this is my semifinal here. So in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, it is going to be Texas versus Ohio State. And then in the Capital One Orange Bowl, I have Penn State versus Georgia. I'm taking Georgia, y'all. I'm going to take Georgia. I don't think Gunnar Stockton is going to lose them this game. I think he's going to keep them in this game by making the right throws, making the right plays, right? And he's going to have a very supportive run game. And I think the experience of this Georgia defense will outlast Notre Dame's offense. And I don't think Riley Leonard has really seen a team like this all year. a defense like this all year, I should say. Right? Penn State is going to beat Boise State, unfortunately. You know, the Cinderella run was gorgeous, was amazing by Boise, but hopefully we get to see him break Barry Sanders' record. But if not, hell of a season by Genty. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to take the Penn State Nittany Lions over Boise State. Ohio State is going to come out with vengeance. They're going to come out motivated, ready to go. You know, like they did versus Tennessee last week in the first round. And I think they'll trump Oregon in a close one. And Texas is going to come out and dominate Arizona State. And it'll be Ohio State versus Texas in the Cotton Bowl. And Penn State versus Georgia in the Capital One Orange Bowl, man. And with the college football playoffs heating up, it's anyone's guess who'll come out on top, really, man. So let's just take a moment to close out today's show. And that wraps up today's episode of the 410 Pod. You know, thank you guys so much for tuning in and catching up with all of the latest football action with me, right? Be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review, leave a comment if you enjoyed the show. Or if you have your own opinion you'd like to make. And stay tuned for the next episode. This episode should be going live tomorrow before the first college football playoff game, the second college football playoff game, I should say. Second round of the college football playoffs. And until next time, I'm your host, K Love, and this has been an amazing first, face cam episode of the 410 Pod. And enjoy the games this week, y'all, and have a nice night. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'm out.
Big beats.